Hi, I'm Blake Myers, and I'm a student at Oxford High School in Michigan, and this is Mastershot, the digital arts, film, and television podcast where we interview successful filmmakers. Today, I'm with Lisa Klein, co-founder of the award-winning Los Angeles-based MadPix Films. Lisa, thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm super excited.
So, how'd you get started in filmmaking?
That's a great question. It's something that I think that I always wanted to do, but growing up in the Detroit area and Southfield and all of that, I started out, my mom was a journalist, so I started out just kind of like writing imaginary TV scripts that I didn't send anywhere. And then when I went to Michigan, I double majored in film, in radio, TV, and film, and English, because film was just always something that I really wanted to do. But again, it was probably different. Like when I was growing up there, it was certainly not a film mecca in any way. It just was, you go to Los Angeles or you go to New York or you do that. And then but it was something that I knew that I wanted to do and had to figure out how to do it. So when I graduated from college, I was driving to New York, stopped in D.C. to visit friends, ended up in D.C. for a couple of years, in Washington, D.C., and working in cable. Somehow I got involved in like writing and editing, like for some cable sports stuff. And then one day I'm like, I love this, I'm having fun, but I know that there's something else. And I just randomly applied to USC Film School thinking there's no way. And then when I got in, I'm like, oh my God, I have to go. It's USC Films. How do I not go? I have to leave this comfortable life. And I did. And I went there and I was doing sort of more like writing. Writing was my focus, and but narrative stuff. And then I'm trying to think through film school, like writing, editing, directing, doing all the stuff. And then Doug Blush, who is my husband and partner in MadPix, was doing some behind the scenes work. And I, went with him and did some stuff. And I'm like, God, I really want to do this. And that's how we started sort of with and it evolved into documentaries. As I realized that, not to quote, the truth is stranger than fiction, but it just is. Not even stranger as much as it's so rich. It is so rich in deep in terms of like what people are going through, and hearing like real stories and listening to people tell their stories. So that's my rambly way of telling you.
That's so true. The truth is it's often more bizarre than anything you could have written about.
It's very much so. Have you always wanted to do documentaries?
Not documentaries specifically, but I've always been drawn to film, like ever since I was a little kid.
And
I started with Lego stop motion.
Oh, you do stop motion?
No, I do documentaries, but that's what I started with. Like stop motion, yeah.
Okay. Are you, what brought you to documentaries, if I can ask you that?
I don't know, to be honest. I can't pinpoint an exact moment, but I just made one and I was like, I love this. I can't live my life any other way. Like, this is amazing.
What was your topic?
My first one was on an artist named Nora Chapa Mendoza. She's a Detroit-based artist. She is 94, I believe, and she just won the Kresge Eminent Artist Prize, which comes with $100,000 cash, and she got to sign the beam at the Scarab Club. It's so cool.
Oh, wow. And you were there for all of it. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, she's a wonderful lady.
Yeah.
So tell us about your most recent film called The S Word. You directed it yourself and produced it with your partner and husband, Doug Blush, as you said. What prompted you to make that film?
Well, I'll tell you about that, but my most recent film actually is called Out Here, which is a short doc. We did it as a short. It's about the homeless situation from the perspective of people who are living outside, for the most part, in Sacramento. And that came to me. That was not like my project, but somebody who had been a psychologist who'd been working with that population. That's why Sacramento. I mean, she was doing that, and she kind of came to us, and she's like, please save this, because she had some stuff that, I mean, they'd been shooting and whatever. And so what also happens with documentaries is, I mean, getting funding is challenging. And so we, when we were shooting it and cutting it, we thought of it as a feature. We had like, hundreds of hours, but funding wise, we had enough to do post. So we turned it into like a 39-minute film. So that's how that one came. But The S Word was far more personal. It's a film about suicide. I started it as somebody who I lost 2 family members to suicide when I was a sophomore in college. So both my father and my brother, and obviously that changes a person. And and I wish that right then I sort of said, okay, this is my path. But I mean, it took a while to be able to sort of kind of figure out what I was going to do about this. And I did not want to make it necessarily about me, because there are enough people who are going through things like this. So in my research, which was about a year of talking to people who had lost people to suicide, because that was my experience. And not that I didn't know that there were people who had attempted and survived, but it just wasn't my experience. But as I interviewed more and more people, I realized, okay, this is where I want to go with this, because I think it'll help the most people, and to be able to talk to people. And it's also going to, help me understand, hopefully, which, I mean, everybody has their own reasons and their own things. So it wasn't like, oh, I can talk to this person and figure out what happened with my father. It wasn't like that, but it was just getting that perspective from the other side that was so important. And I think it was important for people who are also on that ledge, and how these people not only survive but are thriving, and coming to the other side. And it wasn't like an overnight thing, or tomorrow's going to be a better day, or it's a lot of work, and sometimes going backwards too. So that's sort of how, as I did that and realizing that I really want to focus on this. I also have a family in there who had lost their brother to suicide. And that was very hard for me as a filmmaker. And I don't know, Blake, if you've sort of gone into the realm of really personal films, personal for the person you're making the film about, where, as they reveal their stories, you feel kind of a sense of parallel, and you too get emotional, and the veneer of professionalism just breaks down. I mean, I'm standing there behind the camera, she's telling her story about her son, and I'm crying. It's you try to maintain that distance, but in certain films it's really hard. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. Especially
when you have a personal connection to the topic.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And you get to know and really care about your subjects often.
Mm-hmm. I'm very curious about how you find and develop your story ideas. Do they normally just come to you, or do you have to actually find them? Or go out of your way to find them?
Well, it's both. It's like with Out Here, it came to me. I mean, it was already, in development. It was already happening, and that it came to me. So it was more about how we're going to structure it. And for me, just, in terms of my perspective of, we've heard so many politicians and people talking about homeless, and and their encampments here, and for me it was like, I want to hear from the people who are living there, and I want to talk to them, and that's sort of how that developed. With the S Word, as I said, it was very personal, and just we talked to over 100 people and realized with that we had like 300 hours of footage. And once you realize that a 300-hour film is a little long for people to sit through, then we also, because it was also really important for me, even though I didn't even know, because this was like 2015, 14. I wasn't even sure what I was talking about, but I'm like, yeah, we have to have like a multi-level platform and, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm not a marketing person. I just was thinking like, this is a film. This is something that so many people are dealing with, whether it's loss or they themselves are in a struggling place, that I wanted to go further and create, like on our website, we have this thing called S-Word Stories, like all the stories that didn't make it into the film and stuff like that. With the film that I did before that called Of Two Minds, which was about bipolar, and I have also had a family member who was dealing with that. And so it was personal, but it was literally one day I was reading the New York Times, and there was a story about a woman who was doing like a YouTube thing and a blog and a whole thing about her situation, her sort of struggle with mania and depression and all of that. But it was funny. She just did these funny little vignettes and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, it would just be an incredible device to kind of get into this. And then also in that same article, there was something going on in Toronto where something called Mad Pride, where people who were dealing with various mental illnesses there was this big parade where they would go down the street in like straitjackets and stuff like that, embracing who they were and what they were dealing with. And I'm like, we have to film that. I mean, this has got to be something. Because also what's really important to me, because a subject like suicide, not super funny, but you got to find it, whether it's in the characters, whether, the subject, the people, because if you do, like, I didn't want to do a dirge where people sort of sit through an 89-minute film and they're just as sad as, I didn't want that. And I wanted the humor to come out. And so with Of Two Minds, which is a film about bipolar, all of this stuff was just there. And we started seeking people out. We went to Toronto. We called her name was Liz in the film. We got her. And just like literally calling people. And I will say that from my experience, for me, having, as somebody who had dealt with suicide from one side, my sort of, I guess, empathy, experience, all of that really helped with access, because access is super important. I mean, you need your person or people to be there and to really, reveal. It doesn't, as as a documentary filmmaker yourself, it isn't like you show up at somebody's house or place of work with a camera and say, okay, I want to know your deepest, darkest secrets, Yeah. It's the peeling of the onion and getting to know somebody.
How do you build that trust with your characters?
I think it was harder with Of Two Minds, having never been in that situation myself. But with the S Word, it was over a period of time, but it was really very personal. I mean, in that film and Of Two Minds and the S Word, it was very personal to me, like, people in my family who had been through that and sort of talking as peers, as opposed to, I am the filmmaker and I'm going to get this out of you and this out of you. And it took a little time. And one story that I'll share with you from the S Word that I think really established a certain amount of trust was that I was talking to somebody in the film who was telling me, talk about deepest, darkest secrets. I mean, this was at 1 a.m. Camera had been turned off and everything. And so, but we were just talking. We were just talking about stuff. And she was telling me things that were like, oh my God. And this device that you may know was sitting right on the table, and all I had to do was say, hey, can I turn this on? But I chose not to because well, it felt icky to me. It didn't feel like the right thing to do. And from a filmmaking standpoint, boy, would have been great to have that stuff. But the human sort of element of it, and these people to trust me going further, is far more important. So I think it's just how you relate, how you relate, your sincerity, your authenticity. The fact that like you're doing this film on this artist because you think her work is incredible, and you really feel something when you look at her work, and you want to know. Because if you go in, I mean, this is my feeling, my experience, but like if you read something in New York Times and like, wow, that's a really sexy story, I got to go after this and I've got to do this, but you don't have the passion because each film took 5 years. Out here it was like 7. It was just a long time. Like everything just takes a really long time to develop these relationships and stuff. And if you don't feel passion, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In pre-production, when you're doing these year-long projects that are just huge, how do you structure the story? Do you use outlines? Do you storyboard it? How does that go? Here's
another thing. Okay, so when I was developing, as I said, like developing the S word, I was sure that it was going to be all about loss. But in talking to people, in the research, in everything else, I went a different way. And I do feel like whatever your process is okay. Whether you are I've never storyboarded a documentary. I've done it with narrative stuff, but I haven't, just because I feel like if you go into it and you know that this story is going to be about this, and you come out and it's about that, you've done something wrong. I think you've learned nothing along the way, because and I'd love to see your film about this artist, because maybe you went in with certain notions about who she was and you got to know her as it went on. It's like, oh my God, she's also really into flying kites. Who knew? Whatever it may be, And so, there's a film that Doug worked on that, it's basically about this really successful entertainment lawyer and all of this stuff. But he is an ice swimmer.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just this weird thing that he does, He goes in and swims, And, so finding things like that, these just hidden gems that also sort of three-dimensionalize whatever, whoever the people are, I think is super important, because, a one-note thing never really grabs,
Mm-hmm. Circling back to what you said before, you said it was, I think you said, difficult to fund documentaries. How do you go about doing that? Do you do grants? Do you crowdfund? Or is it a mix of everything?
It's a mix. I mean, for a couple of them, I crowdfunded and said I would never, ever, 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 ever do it again. If I was in high school or college, I might. But now at this point, sort of in our careers, that's just not what we're going to do. But I will say that we raised a lot of money. And the thing about it is, the thing that people tell you, I don't know if I believe it or not, because, there's that whole thing about like, just give me money. Come on, friends, you've been my friend, help me. There's that. But I found with the suicide film, there was also, because most of the people with the grants and the angel donors and everybody had some relationship to suicide. Generally on the lost side, they had lost somebody. So for them to be part of something was important for them. And again, I don't want to sound altruistic about it, because it was a very two-way thing. But what happens in a situation, like if I give money for a crowdfunding thing, I have to feel something. And then I feel like I've made a difference, a tiny bit, in them being able to make it. So that's, what I would say about that. But like finding an angel, like somebody who just really wants to be part of something, is great. as directors with egos, we want the final say. We want the final cut. We don't want somebody to come in and say, oh, well, if this person said this or whatever. So it's a balance. It's a balance. And grants are just hard. They're hard to do, and you wait. Oftentimes you wait months for them. So it's that. But generally, it's on topic. So people who have struggled with, whatever it may be, and for you, people in the art world, people who love her and want to see something made about her, it's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. As a director, how do you work on set, pretty much? And have you encountered any troubles with being a female director?
Thinking, I haven't really, probably because a documentary situation is very different than a narrative setting. I think in my early career, absolutely, as a woman who was editing and directing little short sports pieces. So, a lot of, honey, can you get me a coffee? There was a little bit of that. There was a little bit, but you maintain and you're as professional as you can be. So noted that. But in terms of directing, when it's a documentary, it's so much more important to me to listen than to talk. Like, I could come to do an interview and I could have a list of 30 questions on my iPad or whatever. And I might start with my first question, and then it becomes a dialogue, and then boom, it's gone. It's just a dialogue. And that's how I generally approach the interviews. In terms of the verite, when I'm following somebody around, I really, really try to be a fly on the wall. Sometimes I'm a loud fly, but I do try to be a fly on the wall and not, sometimes I'll be asking questions as they're going, as they're walking, as they're going to the farmer's market or whatever they're doing. But it really is about them sort of doing their day or doing what they're doing in me. And with the homeless doc, it was very much that. And it was very much, us being out there and they're telling us, their story, or that they want to get a hotel room or whatever it may be. And we're listening.
Do you think today you can still make a good salary doing just documentaries? Or do you think you should be open to doing commercial work or that kind of thing, or commercials?
It sort of depends. I mean, that's a very fair question. And if you want to be rich, I would have to say no, unless you get to there are documentarians who've gotten to the point of, where the stuff that, Michael Moore, there are people who do what they do and have made sort of a brand. And I think we are in a world of branding and making a name for yourself. And it isn't just about the subjects that you're doing. It's about who you are as well. But I think you can make a living. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it isn't the Avengers living, it isn't that. It's different. But you can, just like with anything, if you set out and you've got your stuff and you're able to make a little bit and get by and do all of that, yeah, I mean, just, continue to make good stuff. I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish about it, because there are people who don't. And in our case, what sustains us mostly is our other work is still documentary. So, for example, like Doug he started out in editing and is a consultant. And now we both, we also consult. So somebody else may bring their project and we'll go through the edit and the time code and, and do notes and all of that. That helps. I mean, because that is somebody else with another project and a budget paying. So there is that as well. Yeah, but we have pretty much, I'm trying to think, over the course of MadPix, it's been documentary until about, and again, this is not a money-making thing at all. This was just, I'm going to just, if I can, just for a second, just take a little turn where we were at a film festival for out here, at a short film festival, and I was standing at a light and with our crew, and you know how like when you press the button and you get like wait, you know that kind of thing. Okay, so that was happening, and I just kind of mused like, wouldn't it be funny if like the pole, there's like a person living in the pole who's really skinny and comes out and just says wait, like he's living in there. It isn't the button. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a short film about that. So now I've done this animated film that's 2 minutes and 22 seconds. I don't expect that to be a source of income, but that was like literally just something that I kind of did. So that's really the only kind of thing. And maybe I'll make another animated film. I don't know. But documentary is kind of where we are right now.
Mm. Did the animation coincide with you starting to paint? Or were those different
No,
times?
that was, but it helped. I have to say, no, the animation all happened since everything started last June, and the painting started in 2020.
Okay.
So, but I will say that with the painting and just like mixing colors and all of that, it probably, because I'm not an animator and I worked with an animator, but it did help my perspective, because anytime, just like you worked with an artist for however long you were with her, that had to educate you in some way about art,
For
right?
sure.
In her process. So
For
I think,
sure.
yeah, I think I think that's a great question, but it was tangential, but it certainly, yeah.
What do you think is the most important skill you should develop as a student to be successful in filmmaking?
Thank you so much for that really easy question. Does it have to be one thing, or can there be?
Could be as many things as
yeah.
you want.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about documentary specifically, or just as a filmmaker? You know what?
You could do either way.
As a documentarian, as a narrative filmmaker, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a veterinarian, a plumber, I think it's listening. I think that is the most important skill when it comes to that, is being able to, I mean, we all have egos. It doesn't matter. I mean, you know, as much as us, like, I don't have, we all have egos, but it really, like when you're on a set and you're talking to somebody and they tell you something, 90% of the time it's going to spark the next thing. You know, it really is. And just being as open as you can be, because if you go in, particularly, you know, as a young filmmaker, and you go and you have all these ideas and I think the thing not to have is rigidity. I think that is a killer. I really do, of creativity. You know, drama and drama that's not part of the movie, and rigidity are really can be toxic. I think, you know, like you go in, you know, it's your way. Nobody else can say anything that's going to matter. I think you could get lucky, I guess, but yeah, I think your openness and to other people and your relationships along the way. Like, I mean, I went to film school, and I would say to, you know, kids getting out of high school, because we get this question all the time, like, or getting out of college, do I need to go to film school? And I don't think so anymore. I mean, I feel like everything can be done, you know, whether you can learn how to edit on YouTube, you can do that, like everything is doable. But the one thing that it did do, but I think you can do this another way, is the community and the relationships and the filmmakers who you end up working with and stuff like that. But you can figure that out. I mean, if you're making a film and you put on Craigslist that you need a caterer and a blah, blah, like, you know, people will come to you, or you'll meet people. You'll go to, like, Doug has this thing, doc meetups. And it started out as maybe 50 people, and now they're like 500. I mean, these
wow.
like people have come from like It's there. Maybe it's 300. I could be exaggerating, but it's hundreds, and it's crowded. And it's so you have editors looking to talk to directors, and directors looking to talk to camera people. So because so much of it is about community, particularly when you're doing independent film, whether it's doc or narrative. But when it's independent film, and you don't have the studio behind you, and you're looking for, I think it's, really important to build that. But yeah, I do. I think it really is just kind of being open and listening and all of that. I mean, talent's great. I mean, it's really good if you have talent. Like, if you really, you can build that, but it is good. Like, if you have a really good eye, and if you, in your editing, and you have a really good sense of story and what's going to work together and all of that. But again, if you and I are both making this documentary about this artist, your film and my film are going to be super different. We're going to focus on different things about her, and we're going to get in the editing room, because I do feel that in documentary especially, the editor is the writer. There's no script. So the editor is putting it together and doing the story. That's why story consulting is so fun, because you get to shape, and you get to take something, and it's just a really great way to do it. And that happens. A lot of magic happens in the editing room too. So
yeah, editing is by far my favorite part of the documentary process. It's
that's huge.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Every part of it, like even the monotonous stuff, like labeling your files, all that stuff. It's so fascinating to me.
I love hearing that, because that is it. That really is. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to ask you this question, because I don't know what the answer is going to be. As someone who lives in California, do you think you need to move there if you live in Michigan or another state? Or can you still be successful not in like California or New York?
I think 20 or 30 years ago, like when I moved, I think the answer would have been, you probably do have to go somewhere. Now, I really don't. My cousin is, he lives in like Farmington Hills or something like that. And he is obsessed with film. And he went to Michigan, and he did not go to grad school, but he's been film, and he's producing. I mean, he's producing narratives. He's very interested in narratives, and he comes out here a lot. You might have to come here if you have a partner here or something, but unfortunately, who killed it? The governor before Whitmer killed the incentives. Because when you had the incentives in Michigan, that was so great, because people would come there and shoot. Like Clint Eastwood did a movie there. People do film in Michigan, and Key and Peele are from Detroit, and so you have, I think Tim Robinson might be from Detroit. He was in that series called Detroiters. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So you do have. And I think that's really exciting. Like, I think you can make films there. Yeah, I don't think you have to move here, no. That's me. With documentaries, 100% no. Documentaries, you can be absolutely anywhere. Absolutely. If you want to make an Avengers movie, if you want to be part of that, I'm just using the Avengers, but any big Hollywood blockbuster, you would probably have to come to California or Atlanta or Vancouver, wherever they're shooting it. I mean, you generally have to be, and a documentary, you have to go where your subjects are. So most of our film, most of the S Word was not shot in California. In fact, we only had one person who was from some beach city, but we were everywhere. We were in, Philadelphia, we were in New York, we were in Boston. So yeah, you just go where your people are. So documentary, 100% no. Okay. And then, if you're like meeting people, like getting really good camera people, really good editors and stuff like that, they're there, I would think, right? I mean, like, you're in high school, are you a senior, junior?
I'm a junior right now.
You're a junior. Okay. So do you have like a film club at your high school?
Kind of, but I'm not. Okay. No, not really.
You're not.
It's not super active.
Well, where are you? Do you shoot your own stuff?
I do. Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you're a polymath.
Yeah. I deal with the cinematography, editing, everything.
You do the whole thing. Eventually, you're going to want to find people who can help do that, because particularly, I mean, with cinematography, that's it, but with editing, at least have impact screenings, because I think it's always good to have another voice. So even if you're one of the editors, it's really good to have like a second editor, to have somebody, because just in general, it's just really good to have other voices. Like when I was in film school, I edited. I happened to be editing a student film that was selected that I wrote, but somebody else was directing it, and I was one of the editors. There were two editors. All I did was complain about her editing and just try to fix it and try to make it my story. And so that was, that was my own learning. And it was a narrative. And so we definitely had conversations. But in general, though, when you are okay. I'll say one other thing. When I was making the suicide film, when I was making the S Word, I thought every single person on the crew has to have had some experience with suicide, whether they lost somebody or they themselves have attempted, and then like 5 minutes later, I'm like having this conversation. I'm like, that is the dumbest idea I've ever had. And our editor, because perspective is gone, then it becomes a film that would only be seen. I wanted the film to be seen by everybody, because everybody knows somebody who knows somebody, or eventually will, or, and unfortunately, and our editor had no experience, knew nobody, and learned so much. And I learned so much from him about what was palatable to an audience who were, so if you are, you're directing, you're shooting, you're editing, eventually you just need other perspective besides, because again, that goes into the, like it becomes a very sort of single vision then, which again, it should be your vision, but it really is good to at least hear the other voices. And even if it's to know, nah, that's not going to work, whatever it is.
For sure.
That's just, again, this is all my opinion, so yeah.
All right, so I think we're out of time, but it was so awesome to talk to you, Lisa. I learned so much, and I'm sure the audience learned so much, and thank you for being with us on Master Shot today.
Well, thank you, Blake. This was great. Thank you. And I want to, send me some links of your films,
I will.
Okay? I would
I'll
love
be sure
to see
to.
what you're doing. I want to follow your career.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye.